Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name's Mike, and I'm the programs director here at Africa Fire Mission. And we're so happy that you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's virtual training session. Today, we're going to be talking about some topics that typically revolve around bushfire. We're going to be talking about the 10 standard fire orders and the 18 watchout situations. Um, this is inspired a bit. Last month, we were doing some in person training in Zambia, and we were doing a little bit of bushfire training there. And this was a subject we didn't quite have time to get to. And I know we had lots of questions while we were working in Kenya earlier this month about some bushfire training. So we're going to cover this topic a little bit and today. Before we get started with our training today, I'm going to pass things over to Errol Sianga. Errol is our Africa Fire Mission's fire safety advocate, and he's going to get us started here with a couple words of encouragement.
Thank you very much, Mike. Good evening, everyone. Good morning. Good afternoon. Welcome you all once again. Good to see you all. Karibuni sana. I welcome you all to this wonderful, amazing forum where we learn and also exchange knowledge and experience in various departments and stations. So, as Chief Mike has mentioned, before we start our class for today, I'll start with with words of encouragement. So, our words of encouragement is coming from the Bible, the book of First John, chapter number 4, verse 10. The book of First John, chapter number 4, verse 10. I'm reading from New King James Version, and it says, "In this is love, and that we loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son to be a proportion for our sins." Okay, it means that God loved us so much, but He has to send His Son so that He can die for us, so that also our sins can be forgiven. So, also as you're learning today, we need to also, as we gather this information, we need to spread out the love or this information that we are getting today in this class so that each and every person in our department or in our community or in our station should get to understand and get to at least you improve their knowledge from point A to point B. So, welcome you all. I hope you have your notebook and pen. I have mine with me here, my notebook and pen. So, I'm ready to write down notes as I listen to Chief Mike's lesson today. Thank you very much and welcome once again. Over to you, Chief Mike.
Thank you, Errol. Thanks for all the work that you're doing to try to help promote fire safety throughout Kenya and really all of Africa. Much appreciated. Before I get started with today's lesson, let me just touch on a few administrative notes. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, we'll get you a certificate of attendance for today's training. If something happens where your network drops or you've got to respond to a call, you can't stick around for all that time. There are some other options available to you. Um, Keep an eye in the chat. I'll drop a link to a Google Drive folder where you can watch a recording of today's training, answer a couple questions, and I can get you a certificate of attendance for that. The easiest way to access that and a bunch of other free resources that we have available is to go to our webpage at www.africafiremission.org. If you go there, go to the resources tab, click on training. You'll find a registration link for these trainings. You'll find a link to that Google Drive folder that I was talking about. Check us out on YouTube. All of our trainings are recorded and posted. They premiere on Friday mornings at 8 a.m. East Africa time. So lots of great resources there. I encourage you to get over to that webpage. Check out what we have available there to you. One other quick reminder, the name that you're using, your screen name right now, that's the name that goes on that certificate I was talking about earlier. So if you'd like to read something else, just go ahead and click on yourself there, click on the rename, and put in whichever name you'd like to show up on your certificate there. If you've got multiple people watching on your screen, that's a great way to save some money and make good use of your data. Uh, if you send me an email, I just dropped my email address in the chat there. Send me an email and let me know who else is watching on that screen with you, and I'll be sure to get them a certificate of attendance for today's training as well. With that, I think I'm going to get started here with today's training. Um, and we're gonna be talking our way through um, this topic is a topic about bushfire, wildland firefighting. We're talking about the 10 standard fire orders and the 18 watch out situations. So what is this? Um, Really, what this is, these are sort of 10 standard orders that when you're dealing with bushfire, you kind of work your way through these, make sure that you're taking all of these things into account. These were developed back in the late 1950s here in the US. They studied a bunch of tragedy fires from the 1930s through the 1950s, and they sort of looked at the common reasons that people were injured or killed in what we call a tragedy fire, right? And tried to come up with some common causes for that, and then some sort of solutions for that. So that's what these the 10 standard fire orders are. You sort of work your way through them. It's not a list that you need to memorize, but it is something that you want to go over and over and over again. Every time we take a break, when we're out on a fire, we're pulling these things out, reading through these. We're reading through these every day at our morning briefing. Um, you know, we're making sure that we're really familiar with these. The next part of it is these 18 watch out situations, or these 18 situations that shout watch out. And they're a little bit different than the standard fire orders in that um, uh, they aren't things that you should follow. They're things that when you see them happening on a fire, you need to your attention needs to heighten. You need to really start thinking about your safety and thinking about what's going on and being extra careful. Okay, so those are the 18 watch out situations. And with these 10 standard fire orders, now these are built around wildland fire. These are built around bushfire. But um, I think that you could relate them to just about any incident that you respond to if you just changed up the wording a little bit or the situation. So think about that as well as how you can apply these every time you're out on a call as we begin to go through these. So we're going to start with these 10 standard firefighting orders um, here in the bushfire world, right? And starting with the first one, number one, first standard firefighting order: keep informed on fire weather conditions and forecasts. All right. So weather is a major factor in fire behavior, and especially for bushfire, right? So you want to use every means that's at your disposal to stay informed on weather conditions and forecasts. All right. And there's some questions that you want to be able to answer as you're thinking about the weather and how it relates. So, what's the weather in the fire area? What's going on? What's temperature, humidity? What's that kind of stuff? What's the current conditions right now? Next, what's the weather likely to do? So, as we're working on this fire, as time progresses, what's the weather going to do? How's it going to change? Is the weather working against us? Is it getting hotter and drier? Is it getting windier? What are those changing conditions? Is this the critical burning period, right? During the day, they're dependent upon the weather conditions, we come into this critical burning period, right? Um, where the temperatures and humidities really make the most fire danger for the day. And what happens every day. Some days there may be little to no fire danger, but there is sort of this would be the worst time, right? In these good fire days where fire's actively burning, there's these critical periods where things are going to be the worst they get that day. So are we getting into that period? Are we going to have winds? Are we going to have high temperatures? Are we going to have low humidity? All of these things are factors that impact our fuels and impact which way the fire is going to burn. Um, is there a chance that there's going to be wind from passing weather front or winds that are associated with different cloud formations? So, if a storm is blowing through, sometimes the leading edge of those storms can produce a lot of high winds that are really going to have a strong impact on the fire. So, we want to keep all those things in mind using whatever tools we have, whether that is and you've got to be cautious with weather prediction tools that aren't local to your area. Um, the I have a weather app on my phone that I like to use when I'm working in Africa. It's totally inaccurate. It doesn't use local data. It tries to predict the weather based on satellite imagery and things like that. So it doesn't work really well. So find a good source for weather in your area. Typically, what's your government weather bureau or something like that that may help you out to learn these forecasts and things like that. Now, you can also use your own senses, right, and other available means to determine what the weather conditions are. Okay, so you can use just sort of your feelings, right? If you don't have a weather station with you, in this image that we're looking at here, this guy's standing there at a portable weather station that they take and set up on fires. Probably don't have that thing. But what can you feel? You can feel if the temperature's increasing, you can feel if the temperature's decreasing. Obviously, the time of day is going to tell us whether the temperature's likely to go up or the temperature's likely to decrease. What about your skin? Does your skin feel dry? Are your lips starting to dry out and crack? That's a good indication that relative humidity is really dropping. So those are good indicators that you can look at. Using your eyes, right? Um, you can see the impacts of wind, right? You can see leaves blowing, you can see grass swaying and things like that. We have a tool. You can actually download it online. It's called the IRPG. It's the Incident Response Pocket Guide for wildland fire. Um, you can find that as an app if you search your app store for IRPG. You can find that. It's got all sorts of great tools in there. There's actually a visual estimate of the surface wind speed chart that gives you some ideas about how you can determine what the surface wind speed is, looking at things like vegetation, looking at maybe a flag, cloud movement, or even the movement of smoke or dust, right? You can use your sense of hearing. You can listen to fire weather forecasts. You can also listen to people that know sort of the local weather conditions, local weather patterns, um, that sort of stuff. Um, they also make portable weather kits. I don't know if that would be available to you or not, but I should have grabbed mine so I could pull it up. But it's called a belt weather kit, and it's got some different tools in it that let you take the current conditions of the weather small enough that it fits on your belt. They're all manual tools, nothing sort of digital or anything. So lots of different ways that you can keep track of the weather. But that's our first standard order, right? Keep informed on the fire weather conditions and forecasts. Order number two may not seem like a big deal, right? Know what your fire is doing at all times. Okay, so a lot of times, small fires can become large ones very quickly sometimes, depending upon the weather situations. So you need to know what that fire is doing at all times. So you can do that yourself by observing the fire from some kind of a vantage point, finding a little bit of higher ground or something like that, where you can look and see the whole fire area. You can scout ahead, on foot, get out ahead of the fire, walking around to see what's going on. Um, as technology becomes available, there's things like the use of drones. If you're in some type of a major incident where you've got outside resources coming in, assistance from the military or something like that, where they have helicopters or some type of aircraft, That's a great way to have an idea of what's going on with the fire. But then you should be informing all of your crew members, everybody that's working, of the current situation as well. So be sure everyone knows what that fire is doing at all times, right? Um, as we begin to suppress a bushfire, we should probably have an incident action plan. There's some great paperwork for filling out incident action plans, all of the different paperwork and documentation that you would need to record for a wildland fire, for a bushfire, are available from an organization, the NWCG. That's the National Wildland Coordinating Group out of the US. They have a ton of forms and documents that you can use to help keep you on track when you're working on a fire. So something to check out, another resource to look for. But know what your fire is doing at all times, our standard order number 2. The next one, this one we can certainly apply to both a bushfire and any other type of fire that we go to, right? Number 3 is base all actions on current and expected behavior of the fire. So there's all sorts of different conditions that cause changes in the fire and things like that. And every fire you approach is going to be a little bit different, right? But all fires behave according to the same principles. So even though no two fires are exactly alike, we do have a good idea of how a fire is going to burn based on variations in fuel, weather, and topography. So base all of our actions on what that fire's currently doing and then what's expected to do next. So where that fire is going to go, plan out our next steps based on where we think that fire is going to go. So, what's the fire doing right now? Can we control it with the resources that we have at the scene or resources that are on their way, or do we need to get more resources? What's that fire likely to do later on as the day progresses? Can we flank it? Can we work our way out those flanks, or should we stay back away and choose an indirect attack where we get out ahead of the fire to cut a fire break or a fire line? And what actions are the crew doing right now? What equipment are we using? Is it effective? Are we making our attack at the right spot? What's the weather like in the area? What's the weather likely to do? That goes back to our first order. What type of fuel is burning? Can we build control lines fast enough? Or is the fuel a type that can cause spot fires where if the wind blows, it's going to pick up those embers and carry them out ahead of the main fire to start another one? Then, what type of fuel is the fire heading towards? Maybe it's heading towards an area where there isn't a whole lot of fuel, so we don't have to do much. We can let the fire reach there and burn itself out. Or maybe it's moving towards some heavy fuels where we need to get in there and get it stopped before it gets there. Do we have the proper tools? What other resources do we need? So, basing all of our actions on the current behavior of the fire as well as the expected behavior of the fire. Standard order number 4. Identify escape routes and safety zones and make them known. All right. So every time we're working on a bushfire, we've got to have an escape route that takes us to a safety zone. We want to make sure that everybody knows what those are and where they're at. Some good areas that you might select as a safety zone could be a burned area, what we call working in the black, an area that the fire is always burnt through. Just make sure that it's close enough to where you're working that you can safely reach it. Those safety zones are places you want to identify. Maybe you have to make that safety zone by clearing out the fuels to make an area that's safe in case the fire gets too close and burns. Once you've identified or constructed those safety zones, you got to make sure everybody knows where they're at. Of course, natural barriers, rocky areas, waterways, streams, lakes, that kind of stuff are other great areas that you could use as those safety zones. Just need to let people know where they're at. As that fire progresses and as we keep working on it, additional safety zones may need to be identified. So as you identify some new safety zones, be sure that you're passing that on to everybody working on the fire. Like I said, that black area, the already burnt area, is a great one to do that. Make sure that you've got some kind of an escape route as well, even if you've got to build one. You may have to cut your way through some bush in order to make a quick escape to that safety zone. So think about that. Think about constructing that, and again, make sure everyone knows where it's at. Uh, and then be sure that you're being cautious with those escape routes and things like that. Make sure everybody knows where they are, how you get to it, what to do once you get to that safety zone. Um, Use caution if that escape route goes through an area that may pose a hazard based on topography or fuel or something else. Um, be sure you're aware that there might be changes to the escape routes as the fire progresses. So make sure that if the escape routes change, the safety zones change, be sure everybody knows that. And remember, too, that as the fire expands and as you're working further along the line, um, it may take longer. Your travel time on those escape routes to get to your safety zone may take longer. So be sure that's always evaluated and shared with everyone, especially as we get into those critical burn times during the day where we're really going to see that fire activity significantly increase. So that's our standard order number 4: identify escape routes and safety zones and make them known. Number 5, post lookouts when there's possible danger. Okay. Uh, this one can be a little difficult to do sometimes, especially if you're dealing with limited manpower. But you need to be sure that you've got some lookouts. If you look at this illustration that we've got here, this guy's running a portable pump with a hose lay up the hill to where the fire's at. And you've got a guy standing in the middle there who's sort of relaying information back and forth. The guy down with the pump can't see the main body of the fire. So you got to have a lookout posted somewhere um, to keep everybody informed on what's going on. It goes back to those first few fire orders and things like that. Okay. You may need more than one lookout as well, right? Um, so you need that lookout if the head of the fire is not visible to the crew. If you're doing work with chainsaws, certainly you're going to need some lookouts there. If you're using manpower and machine power at the same time, if you're fortunate enough to get, a excavator, a bulldozer, a tractor plow, something mechanical that's working to help you with that fire, maybe from your road department or something like that. Be sure there's a lookout when they're working near other people. If you're in an area where there could be falling rocks, any sort of obvious hazards, um, you're probably not working in situations where you've got aircraft operating, but we certainly use lookouts when we've got aircraft operating on the fire and doing airdrops of water and things like that. Um, and then if you're doing firing operations, where you're actually putting some fire on the ground, you're actually starting some fire to help with the extinguishment of the fire, right? Burning out some unburnt fuels and things like that. Another situation where you need to have a lookout posted. You may need more than one to relay information. So something to think about. And that lookout doesn't necessarily have to be, in your situations, doesn't necessarily have to be a firefighter. If you can find a sort of responsible citizen that's going to stick around, stay where they're at, and be sure that they can reliably relay information to you, there's an option there as well. That's our standard order number 5: post lookouts when there is possible danger. Okay. Uh, Number 6, I love this one. This one I think we should certainly use on every call. Be alert, keep calm, think clearly, and act decisively. Matter of fact, this one's good for everyday life. We should do this all day, every day, right? Be alert, keep calm, think clearly, act decisively. When you're facing a possible life-threatening problem, everyone, you, other crew members, your supervisors, everybody needs to keep calm and analyze what's happening. Okay. Panic can endanger the crew, endanger the supervisor. Um, if you're in charge of one of these incidents, after you evaluate that situation, decide how you're going to deal with it, right? And then do it. Be decisive, make your decision, think clearly. And once you've made that decision, get to it, right? Um, there's a lot of different factors that can impact your decision making when you're working on a fire. Fatigue, right? So you want to, sort of generally speaking, right, try to stay in shape, be sure you're eating right, getting plenty of sleep and rest, so that when you're on the fire line, you can work without getting too fatigued. Be sure you're drinking lots of fluids and staying hydrated. Uh, Heat stress can cause you to fatigue and cause you to maybe not think so clearly. Being exposed to large amounts of smoke and carbon monoxide, things like that can impair that judgment, or just the stress of being in a situation that might be life threatening, right? So um, if your decision making ability becomes impaired for some reason, right, you're putting everybody in danger. So you've got to be sure that you're staying alert, staying calm, thinking clearly, acting decisively, right? So maintain your self control. Be sure you're thinking about contingency plans, what you could do differently if things start to go wrong. If you feel yourself getting fatigued, there, become more cautious. Monitor the situation a lot closer. Double check any sort of critical information. Seek advice from others. Seek information and advice from other people, and be sure that you know your own limitations, right? But then we're going to stay alert, keep calm, think clearly, and then when we choose how we're going to go about things, we're gonna get to work and get the tasks accomplished. Okay. Standard order number 7: maintain prompt communications with your forces, your supervisor, and adjoining forces. Communication is really key on any type of fire, certainly on a bush fire where we start to get stretched out over a little bit larger different distances. That adequate communication, it's essential to fire line safety. So maintain that good communication within your crew that's right there, between your crew and any kind of lookouts or scouts that may be out ahead of you looking for the fire. Any other resources that are there working with you to help put out the fire. Be sure that you're keeping that communication open, whether you're fortunate enough to have some radios, whether that's through using the telephone, right, using a cellular phone or something like that, or any other reliable means, right. Uh, be sure that we're keeping that communication open. Applies on every incident we're on. Maintain prompt communication with your forces, your supervisor, and adjoining forces. Standard order number 8: give clear instructions and be sure that they're understood. All right. The likelihood of accidents occurring increases dramatically if supervisors are giving vague or ambiguous instructions, right? The people aren't sure quite what they're supposed to do, not given specific instructions. Um, a lot of times your instructions are given verbally, um, but even some short, brief, clear written instructions have their place as well. Sometimes those verbal instructions can be incomplete, or they can be misinterpreted or forgotten. So if you can jot down some quick orders, especially if somebody's got to go some kind of distance before they start working, that's really good. Um, Verify the assignment. They should be telling you what to do, what's the objective, how to do it, where to go, where you should end your assignment, when you should have that assignment completed by, who are you coordinating with, who are you reporting to, who's your direct supervisor, if it's working for an extended period of time, who's going to be relieving you, what's the time period for that, all sorts of different things, right? Um, so be sure that those communications are nice and clear. Be sure they're understood. Certainly, with the verbal orders, the best way to do that. is that the person giving the orders, gives the instructions, the person receiving them repeats them back to make sure that they're understood. So give clear instructions, be sure they're understood. Number 8. And number 9, maintain control of your forces at all times. Um, this is really important for whoever's acting in those leadership positions. Supervisors, crew leaders should be the ones that are in control all the time. Be sure you're considering the capabilities and limitations of your crew members when you're making an assignment. So think about who you've got with you. Be sure that you're assigning tasks that they'll be competent and capable of. Be sure that you're inspecting any tools and equipment that you've got. Give them some safety briefings to make sure everyone's on the same page. As a supervisor, you want to exhibit that command presence. Right? Be sure that you're exerting your authority as it's necessary. Follow the chain of command, whatever that may be, as it's assigned. And then keep in mind all of those other factors that we've talked about, ensuring assignments and instructions are clear, establish and maintaining good communication, knowing the location of all of our crew members, knowing the current status of the fire, keeping all that stuff in mind. That's number 9, maintain control of your forces at all times. So then we wrap up these 10 standard fire orders with order number 10. And order number 10 sort of goes after considering orders 1 through 9. Then we do number 10, which is fight the fire aggressively, having provided for safety first. All right. Aggressive action is the key to successful fire suppression, but safety has to be that first priority. So make sure that you're analyzing the situation and then plan your attack consistent with accepted practices and methods that work well under the existing conditions. So, really don't be afraid to be aggressive. Get out there and attack that fire. Just be sure you're thinking about all of those safety considerations first. So, working your way 1 through 9 through those 10 standard orders. And then after you've evaluated all those 9, we go to number 10, fight the fire aggressively and provide for safety first. So, those 10 standard firefighting orders. We want to follow those on every incident, certainly with bushfires, and think about how you can apply those to other incidents as well. Now, we don't need to memorize those, but you should go over that list over and over again until it's ingrained in you and it's very familiar to you, right? This next section we're going to talk about, we call them watch out situations, or the 18 situations that shout watch out. So, what I want you to think about with these are, if you encounter this situation, it doesn't mean you're going to stop. It doesn't mean you're not going to fight the fire. But what it does mean is that now we're at a heightened sense of alertness. We're at a heightened sense of readiness. We're acting extra cautious because we know we're in a dangerous situation whenever we see any of these things. All right, so here we go with our watch out situations. Number 1, the fire's not scouted and it's not sized up. All right, so uh, you're in danger anytime that you're assigned to a fire or even just part of a fire where you can't see the whole perimeter of the fire and your crew hasn't had the opportunity to see that whole fire. Um, so you've got to know what that fire is doing. It goes back to those standard firefighting orders. So if we arrive on the fire and no one has walked the whole thing, or we don't know the complete size of the fire, it hasn't been sized up, that doesn't mean we're not going to do anything. Now we're starting to think, hey, this fire, we don't know exactly what this fire is doing. This could be dangerous. We need to watch out. We need to be cautious. Situation number 2, you're in country not seen in daylight. Um, so, this happens. We run into this a bit where I'm from. because we pull resources from long distances away. Sometimes we have specialized resources that work on bushfire. So there may be times that I'll get called to a fire in an area that I've never been before, and I arrive after dark, and we've got to start working on the fire. I've never seen it during the daytime, so I don't know anything about the topography or the terrain. I don't know the lay of the land. Um, it can be unsafe. I don't know the shape of the land. I don't know anything about the density of the vegetation that the fire may be working in. I don't know distances between landmarks that we may use to describe where we're at. Um, I don't know about, loose rocks, snags, dead trees, falling debris, and things like that. So, does that mean I'm not going to work? No, but I'm going to be heightened caution when I'm working in a place that haven't seen in the daylight. Watch out situation number three: safety zones and escape routes are not identified. Okay, um, goes back again to our standard fire orders. We should have established safety zones and escape routes and make sure everyone knows where they're at. If we get to the fire and they haven't been established yet, uh, or they have been, but nobody's told us where they are, we've got to be extra cautious. Now, we know we mentioned earlier that in the black, in the burned area, is a good place for a safety zone. So we need to find out what those locations are, where we can go to be safe, and use our judgment. Um, we don't want to prevent that to prevent us from attacking the fire. Right, we want to fight that fire aggressively, maintaining safety first. Right, as the fire is small, maybe the safety zone is to just go back, go back where we came from. But if you don't know, if nobody's identified those things yet, certainly we're in a watch out situation where we've got to be extra cautious. Watch out situation number four. You're unfamiliar with weather and local factors influencing fire behavior. Um, in different areas, um, you get these little, what they call a microclimate, right? Where weather conditions may differ based on the location due to topography, due to, if you're closer to the ocean or you're closer to a large body of water. Uh, so if you're not familiar with some of those local things, right? We talk about prevailing wind directions. What direction does the wind typically blow? Where I'm at right now, typically the wind moves from the west to the east. Um, that's our typical prevailing wind. But when you get to certain areas close to here, because of the shape of the mountains and things like that, that prevailing wind may actually move from the south to the north, or vice versa. So if you don't know about those local weather factors or those other local factors that influence fire behavior, maybe it's certain types of fuels that you're not used to, or something like that. If you don't know about that local area, right? We need to be a little bit extra cautious. Ask people in the area about those local weather patterns and things like that to try to figure out what's going on, make yourself a little bit safer. Number five, you're uninformed on strategy, tactics, and hazards. This one kind of relates to a bit of a lack of communication. If you don't know what the plan of attack is and how you and your crew fit into that, that can put you in jeopardy. So we certainly don't want to be engaging in what we call freelancing. Everybody should be working under that same incident action plan, whether that's just in someone's head or it's written out on paper. We got to make sure that we know what the strategy is, what the attack method's going to be, so that we're not. You look at this picture, of course, it's showing an airdrop, right? That we are not in the line of fire, right underneath that airdrop or something like that. So Uh, if you don't know what's going on, be sure you ask those questions. Don't be shy about asking why you're doing what you're doing, so that you're informed on those strategies, tactics, and hazards in the area. Number six, instruction assignments are not clear, very similar to the last one. Maybe you were uninformed on the strategy and the tactics. That's sort of the overall plan of how we're going to do that fire attack. But this one dials it down to your individual assignments, right? Your instruction, your assignment isn't clear. Maybe somebody just says, go to the right flank and get to work. Okay. That's not really a clear assignment. How do you want us to get to work? What type of equipment do you want to do? Are we doing a direct attack on the fire? Are we doing an indirect attack? So results of that poor communication can be both unproductive and dangerous. Okay. Once you're on the fire line, it might be too late to clarify what those orders are. So be sure that you're talking about it with that supervisor and be sure you're repeating those orders back to the supervisor to make sure that they're clearly understood. Number seven, watch out situation. No communication link with your crew members or your supervisor. All right. This can happen pretty easily, especially if you're not equipped with radios. Um, if there's no communication amongst your small team, your small crew that you're working with, or you can't get a hold of the person that's in charge of you, it can be very dangerous, right? The lack of communication. So you really need to be sure that you're staying alert. And how can you fix that situation? Whether that's using some lookouts or some relays or something. Certainly a dangerous situation when we don't have communication with others that are working on the fire. Number eight, constructing line without a safe anchor point. Um, when we talk about bushfire suppression tactics, typically the common flow of work is to anchor, flank, and pinch. So, working from a safe anchor point, we work our way out the flanks of the fire and then try to pinch off the fire at the head, anchor, flank, and pinch. But that's all dependent upon starting from a safe anchor point. The anchor point is, a natural or some kind of constructed barrier that can prevent fire spread and the possibility that the fire outflanks the crew, right? We don't want that fire burning around our crew. So we've got to start from a place where the fire is not going to spread from. That's our anchor point. If we're just jumping right into the middle of a flank or the middle of the head fire, constructing that line with no anchor point, very dangerous situation to be in. Watch out, number nine, building fire line downhill with the fire below. Anytime that we're building line on a hill can be dangerous due to rolling debris, rocks, and things like that. If we're starting from a place of elevation and we're digging that line heading down the hill, and there's fire below us, that's a very dangerous situation. Fire spreads rapidly up the hill. As the slope increases, so does the speed of growth of the fire. We cannot outrun a fire burning uphill. It's not going to happen. There's been a number of firefighters that have lost their lives trying to outrun a fire burning up the hill. So we got to be really, really cautious here. Be sure that we're working off of a safe anchor point and that if there is, as if that fire begins to build up or blow up, be sure that we're able to follow that line quickly back to our safe zone. Very dangerous building a fire line downhill when there's fire burning below us. Watch out situation number 10, attempting a frontal assault on the fire. Now, obviously, this depends upon the size of the fire. If we're talking flame heights that are, knee high or lower, uh, and you're going to try to make a frontal attack on the head of that fire, um, that might be a quick and easy way to snuff it right out. But If you've got bigger flame heights and you're attacking from the green, right, the unburnt area on the head of that fire, that puts you in a real, it puts you in a terrible position. Okay. If you don't have enough hose lines or your hose lines are too small, the fire can quickly overrun you. Um, Sparks, embers may get past you, starting spot fires behind you. Um, if you're doing that frontal assault on the fire, you won't have an anchor point. Um, because of lateral fire spread, you might get outflanked. The fire, you're at the place where the fire is moving, rapidly, as rapidly as it can. There's intense heat and smoke, just all around dangerous. Doing that frontal attack on the head of the fire. So super cautious if you're going to get yourself into that situation. Related, similar to what we were talking about of building that fire line downhill with fire below you. Number 11 here is unburned fuel between you and the fire. Whenever we're doing an indirect attack, there's always going to be unburnt fuel between you and the fire. That's okay, but when there is that unburnt fuel between you and the fire, we've got to be sure that we're being extra cautious there. It's dangerous to be in any type of ground cover where there's unburned fuel between you and the fire. If that fire makes a quick run through, um, it can easily overcome you. If you're putting a hose lay in that green towards the fire, that fire may pass over through that fuel and burn through your hose line. So anytime we've got that unburnt fuel between you and the fire, we've got to make sure that we're being extra cautious there, um, using some lookouts if necessary, that sort of thing. Watch out situation number 12. You can't see the main fire and you're not in contact with someone who can. So, maybe you're doing some sort of a support operation. Maybe you're doing that indirect attack where you're cutting that fire line well ahead of the fire, but you can't see the fire and you can't talk to anyone that can see the fire. That puts you at a real disadvantage, very dangerous situation. So the solution there, post a couple of lookouts in between, someone that can see the progress of the fire and relay that information back to you. Watch out situation number 13. Again, we're talking about working on some kind of a slope. This time we're working on a hillside where now the fire is above us and rolling material that's burning may come rolling down the hill and ignite the fire below us. So we've got unburnt fuel below us, fire above us on the hillside where we're working. We're watching out for that rolling debris that can ignite the fuel below. Um, if we're working on that hillside, cutting line on that hillside, that's where we build what's called a cup trench. The cup trench is designed to catch those rolling, burning materials so that they can't ignite the fuel below. So watch out situation there for sure. Watch out situation number 14, the weather's becoming hotter and drier. Typically, this is going to happen as we progress every day, as the fire progresses, as we get later on in the day. Fires like hot and dry weather. It's when they're most active. If it's getting hotter and drier, how do we determine that? Obviously, we can use our senses. We can observe the fire behavior, look for that more intense burning, checking our weather forecasts. If we've got a weather kit with us, checking the weather conditions. You may have to adjust your tactics, right? You start to see new smoke showing up within the burn. Some of that small light duff that's smoldering starts to show visible flames. Um, as it gets hotter and drier, up canyon winds are really going to start to move. Spot fires may start jumping out. Uh, all sorts of situations. If we can tell the weather's becoming hotter and drier, fire conditions are going to get worse. We're going to be in more danger. Tied along with that hot and dry, another weather condition is wind. Watch out situation number 15. The wind increases or changes direction. All sorts of reasons why the wind could be changing directions. But wind is that factor that steers the fire the most. So wind pushes those flames to available fuels. It increases rate of spread, and it preheats the fuels that are in front of that flaming front. So uh, right now, you're working on the fire, and maybe the wind is blowing from the green in toward the black, so it's sort of blowing at your back as you're working the edge of that fire. If that wind direction changes 180 degrees, it could be blowing that fire right towards you, blowing hot materials towards you, starting spot fires behind you. All sorts of dangers with the wind there. Wind also dries out the fuels quicker, you know. So wind increases or changes direction. Certainly, watch out situation. Watch out situation number 16. You're getting frequent spot fires across the line. Uh, you could even just take the across the line out of this. If you're seeing spot fires, things are getting worse. Okay, if the wind is picking up or embers are being thrown off of the fire out ahead of the main body of the fire and starting spot fires, conditions are getting worse. Those spot fires can develop into their own separate big fires. Um, Now you may have multiple fires going on. So if we're getting frequent spot fires anywhere, definitely watch out situation. You got to be cautious. Watch out situation number 17. The terrain and fuels make escape to safety zones difficult. So here, as we're working on the fire, if we start working, up the hill or something like that, as we start working up the slope, it may make it harder for us to work our way back down into those escape zones, safety zones, and escape routes. If we get into thicker bush, thicker vegetation, areas with lots of downed trees, that may make it slower for us to progress through there as we're working our way towards the safety zone. So look at that. Look at the topography of the area. Look at the fuels and try to determine if that's going to make things more dangerous trying to get to our safety zones. We come up to number 18, our last watch out situation. And this one sometimes people, kind of laugh at when they hear this one, but it's taking a nap near the fire line. And if you've only ever worked small fires, that can seem pretty silly. But if you've worked on these large fires where you're working for 24 hours or more, um, uh, you're lots of physical labor and things like that, you may need to have a little rest. Uh, and so, you know, you may need to find a place where you can take a quick nap or something like that to try to get a little refreshed. That's okay. That may be necessary. It certainly is a watch out situation if you're near that fire line. The solution to that is that somebody stays awake as a lookout, while the other crew is resting or taking that quick nap to make sure that they're keeping an eye on what the fire is doing. All right. So that's number 18, our sort of final one. We'll do sort of a quick summary of these. Remember these 10 standard fire orders. We don't need to memorize these, but we should be going over these we should be going through these regularly while we're out working the fire. I've got a decal that lists all of these. That sticker is on the inside of my helmet. So every time I take my helmet off to rest, they're right there. You can read through them. The 10 standard fire orders. Keep informed on fire weather conditions and forecasts. Know what your fire is doing at all times. Base all actions on current and expected behavior of the fire. Identify escape routes and safety zones and make them known. Post lookouts when there's possible danger. Be alert. Keep calm. Think clearly. Act decisively. Maintain prompt communications with your forces, your supervisor, and adjoining forces. Give clear instructions and ensure that they're understood. Maintain control of your forces at all times. And having considered those first 9 orders, fight fire aggressively, having provided for safety first. And then to wrap up those 18 situations that shout, watch out. fires that aren't scouted and sized up. You're in country that you haven't seen in daylight. Safety zones and escape routes are not identified. You're unfamiliar with weather and local factors influencing fire behavior. Uninformed on strategy, tactics, and hazards. Instructions and assignments are not clear. There's no communication link with crew members or supervisors. Constructing fire line without a safe anchor point. Building fire line downhill with the fire below you. Attempting a frontal assault on the fire. Unburned fuel between you and the fire. You can't see the main fire, and you're not in contact with someone who can. On a hillside where rolling material can ignite fuel below. Weather's becoming hotter and drier. Wind is increasing or changing directions. You're getting frequent spot fires across the line. The train and fuels make escape to safety zones difficult, or you need to take a nap near the fire line. 18 situations that shout, watch out. We're coming up here on the top of the hour, end of our formal portion of the training. So we'll in a moment here, I'm going to open the floor up for discussion or any questions that you may have. We've got lots of great resources available on our webpage at www.africafiremission.org. If there's anything I can do to assist you, please feel free to contact me and reach out. With that, we're sort of wrapping up this formal portion of our training. We've got a couple of extra minutes here as we move into our tea time. So let me just wrap things with this formal portion um, up here with a big thank you to all of you for joining us for today's training, taking the time out of your schedules, using your own money, your own bundles so that you could be here and join us for this training. We don't take that for granted. There's plenty of seats available here in the classroom. If you think that there's someone else that may benefit from this training, please feel free to share that registration link uh, and invite them to join us for this training. As we're getting close to the end of the year here, just a reminder, as we wrap up, we take the last 2 weeks of December off. We'll restart, I believe, next year on January 7th. That'll have a new registration link, so please keep your eye out on Africa Fire Mission socials, our email lists, and things like that. Sometime the beginning of next month, we'll get out that registration link for the 2026 virtual training series. Be sure that you're keeping a watch out for that as well. With that, I'm going to wrap up the formal portion of our training with a big thank you, and I hope to see you all again next week.